the game here. He's basically saying it's not the price tag that matters. What matters is I don't want to spend a single dollar on anything that could benefit society. I just want the corporate giveaways. That's what he's saying.
When the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is official. Build Back Better is dead. And this was a death by 1,000 cuts, and everyone with half a political brain should have seen it coming. But yeah, officially, earlier today, Joe Manchin appeared on Fox News Sunday and declared that he would not be voting for this bill in any capacity. The fact that he's saying this to Fox News is really telling of just like the contempt he has for his own party, or just, typical channels of communicating your political positions. Um, yeah, there's more to this, by the way, and I'm gonna discuss the more of this as the video goes along. But I want to show the video. I want to debunk the ridiculous arguments that he gives during this interview with Fox News's Brett Baer, who actually I think did a really good job here. I think this was a good interview, not your typical Fox News insanity. So let's watch.
Joining us now, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good to be with you, Brett.
Senator, you're at the center of this negotiation with the president over his social spending and tax bill, the Build Back Better bill that is not coming up in the Senate before the new year, in part largely because of your reservations. Without you, the leadership doesn't have the votes it needs. So today, right now, what's the state of play?
Well, Brett, this is a mammoth piece of legislation, and I had my reservations from the beginning when I heard about it 5.5 months ago, and I've been working diligently every day and every minute of every day. I've been working on this, meeting with whether it be the President Biden, whether it be Majority Leader Schumer and his staff, whether it would be with Nancy Pelosi, all of my colleagues, from all different spectrums of the political spectrum, if you will, from the right to the left. I've done everything humanly possible. And my concerns I had, and I still have these concerns, and where I'm at right now, the inflation that I was concerned about, it's not transitory, it's real, it's harming every West Virginian. It's making it almost difficult for them to continue to go to their jobs. The cost of gasoline, the cost of groceries, the cost of utility bills, all of these things are hitting in every aspect of their life. And you start looking at then you have the debt that we're carrying at $29 trillion. You have also the geopolitical unrest that we have. You have the COVID variant, and that is wreaking havoc again. People are concerned. I've been with my family. I know everyone's concerned. So when you have these things coming at you the way they are right now, I've always said this, Brett, if I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
Okay, so the excuse that he would have to go home to West Virginia and explain it to his constituents is pure BS. Because there's tons of legislation, like people like Joe Manchin passed, legislation favoring the financial industry, or making, deregulating industries, or making lobbying easier, all that shit. It would seem to me you would have a very hard time explaining this to people, because most people don't want to give more power to lobbyists, don't want to give more power to big businesses. So the excuse that this particular bill he can't explain it is just really, really odd. To say nothing of the fact that this bill would have provided jobs, would have provided, a ton of benefits for people, tangible benefits that they could almost immediately benefit from as soon as this bill was passed. But no, none of that matters. He's more concerned about inflation. And let's be honest, this is just the biggest bullshit excuse you could probably get. Now, it is true. We are currently undergoing a global inflation spike that is driven in large part, especially in countries like the US, by the global supply chain crisis, as well as rising agricultural and energy prices, which all of this is to some degree, or rather to a large degree, related to the pandemic. The global economy has not been able to fully shift out of lockdown, out of all the disruption that happened in 2020. People have shifted their consumption patterns. We buy more physical goods now than before. We buy many of these goods online. Many of these goods are imported. You can imagine how this creates a massive clogging of the global supply chain, uh, because it's not designed for this. That's sort of the problem. Globalization has resulted in all these companies cutting costs to such an extent that the whole supply chain is so dependent on every node functioning perfectly that when a few of these nodes collapses, you're done. If you run out of warehouse space in a port, you're screwed. Uh, if you can't pick up containers quick enough, you're screwed. If there's not enough drivers to carry the containers after they're unloaded, you're screwed. All of these things basically break the system. And what we're seeing now is this whole system breaking up because all these nodes are malfunctioning. So this is, in essence, a transitory thing. The question is how long it's going to last. People say until like second half of 2022 is when we'll start to see some semblance of normality. Don't know. Don't know. I think we're still in a couple of months of a very rough ride here. But the fact is that this inflation spike is not a normal situation. This is not the new state of rise in consumer prices that you're going to see. So instead of explaining to his constituents why inflation is a problem right now, but likely won't be in 6 months or 12 months, he would rather shoot down a bill that would provide much longer benefits, benefits for as long as 10 years to his people. And I think this is a very acceptable trade-off. Now, the issue of whether the Build Back Better bill will cause more inflation is ludicrous. It is absolutely ludicrous. And I'm going to use as a source for this statement someone who I don't agree with at all on many economic issues. But I think in this case, I'm going to quote Larry Summers, because Larry Summers is another inflation hawk. I've been very critical of him. I made a video of him very early on when this channel started, debunking his arguments on inflation. And Larry Summers himself agrees that this bill isn't big enough to really make a significant impact on inflation. So if Larry Summers, who is fundamentally an inflation hawk, disagrees that the Build Back Better bill will not cause inflation, then what better source do you need? Manchin thinks Build Back Better will cause inflation, but Summers thinks the costs of not doing it are huge. So even if there is some slight inflationary impact, even that, like the benefits of it far outweigh the increase in inflation. So this is just so disingenuous, so disingenuous. But let's keep watching.
On this legislation, I have tried everything I know to do. And the president has worked diligently. He's been wonderful to work with. He knows I've had concerns and the problems I've had. And the thing that we should all be is directing our attention towards the variant, the COVID that we have coming back at us in so many different aspects and different ways. It's affecting our lives again. We have inflation that basically could really harm a lot of Americans, and especially those who are most needy and having a hard time struggling right now. So I think that's where our attention needs to be directed towards immediately. This has been going on for 5.5 months.
You're getting all the focus, Senator, but are there
Yeah,
other Democratic
right.
senators who are concerned about this bill like you are? Have you talked to them?
I'm not going to speak for any of myself. I respect. They know they know the difficulties that I've been having with this. I've been very concerned about this. When I first got to the Senate, back in 2011, I was having a meeting on armed services, and
by the way, Kirsten Sinema must have seen this and been like, phew, now I don't have to be chased into bathrooms anymore.
At that time, Admiral Mullen was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, And I'll never forget, in this hearing, he was asked the question, what's the greatest threat the United States of America faces? And I'm thinking I'm going to hear something in basically the military threats we might have around the world. Without blinking an eye, he said the debt of our nation is the greatest threat. Now, the debt was 14 trillion then, but it's 29 trillion now.
Okay, question number one. Is Admiral Mullen a trained economist? I don't think he is. Second of all, who is the what is the institution most responsible for the US's debt? That would be the military. So this is, again, so incredibly disingenuous. Like, you're asking literally the head of the institution that is primarily responsible for the US's debt. And he says that they're implicitly the problem. But has Manchin ever complained about the military budget? Will he ever say that spending 778 billion, which was the most recent budget passed, which was in excess of what the military actually wanted? So they gave them more money. Did anyone say this is too much? This is going to cause inflation? No, they didn't. That's the whole bullshit of this. That the military always gets a pass whenever money is involved, and whenever the impact, the economic impacts of more spending, it's only all the other bills that apparently cause this, not military spending. Yeah, this is just wrong. And I think, I mean, this is Fox News. Obviously, they wouldn't follow it up, but this would have been the perfect moment to bring up. But you voted for the military budget, didn't you? That would have been the perfect follow-up. Again, Fox News is never going to ask that. But you know what? If this had been CNN or MSNBC, they wouldn't have done it either. They would not have done this either. So it's kind of the same.
Inflation is real. It's not going away anytime soon. We don't know when the end will come. There's a lot of people hurting right now. This COVID, we're fighting on a daily basis, and it's coming at different angles at us, if you will. These are serious things. There's a lot of good, but that bill is a mammoth piece of legislation, a mammoth piece. And when it's done even through regular order, it would be a tremendous, huge undertaking.
So Democrats obviously are frustrated in your caucus, progressives especially, but they.
By the way, this notion of like no one knows when the end will come. Well, why don't you speak with economists? Why don't you have them sit down and explain to you exactly what the end game is of inflation? This is, perhaps slightly more technical. I wouldn't expect perhaps Brett Baer to go into a detailed analysis of inflation. I will give him that concession that maybe not every news host is as well versed on complex economic topics. But Manchin should have access to economists who can tell him that. I mean, he has staffers. Surely there is an economist among his staff who can explain to him like what the end game is.
Point to what they've been doing since the first part of this. The Senate, the conventional wisdom is the longer it goes, it was going to be trimmed down. But the House passed bill was at $2.2 trillion, down from Bernie Sanders' $6 trillion, the initial pitch, which was lowered to $3.5 trillion, now comes in at just under $2 trillion. So your number at the beginning was 1.7. Where is the disconnect that you are now a no? You can't get to yes? Well, if you're a Democrat, you're pushing you?
Yeah. Well, Brett, first of all, when this all came about and I went and spoke to the leader, Schumer at that time, and I explained to him where I was and the concerns I had. And at 1.5 trillion is where I thought the most that we could do if we just did it and basically took care of the things that we thought were the highest priorities. As you recall, Bernie started at 6 trillion. And I think he was sincere what he thinks needs to be done and the changes he would like to make are social changes. Then they went to 3.5 trillion. That went down to 2.2 from the House side, and even at 1.75. The thing that never changed, Brett, was basically the same amount of things that they're trying to accomplish.
Okay, this is really, really important. Because what he's saying here is he's not opposed to the price tag per se. What he's opposed is to all the social spending in that bill. In other words, if this bill had been the original Bernie Sanders 6 trillion bill, but all of this was basically like corporate giveaways, like the other infrastructure bill, not the Build Back Better, the one that was already passed, the bipartisan bill. If this was all just corporate handouts, he would have been thrilled. On the other hand, if there was only a zero point 0.5 trillion bill, but all of it was social spending or climate spending, he would vote against it. He's basically admitting the game here. He's basically saying it's not the price tag that matters. What matters is I don't want to spend a single dollar on anything that could benefit society. I just want the corporate giveaways. That's what he's saying.
By just changing, if you will, the amount of time that we can depend on them. So if you're going to do something and do it, pick what our priorities are, like most people do in their families or their businesses, and you fund them for 10 years, and you make sure that they deliver the services for 10 years. It's hard to deliver service for 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, and how are we going to continue them? Unless it's going to put a burden, or unless we have to go back and make adjustments. But we should be upfront and pick our priorities. That's the difference. So it hasn't shrunk in the desire. The intent is always there.
Can you imagine if FDR, when he was passing the New Deal, gave that bullshit argument? He was like, "Well, I just don't know. 3 years down the line, what are we gonna do about it? How are we gonna continue it?" This guy is just looking for excuses to say no to this bill, and the writing was on the wall from the very beginning.
And what we need to do is get our financial house in order, but be able to pay for what we do and do what we pay for.
Well, guess what? There was a provision to raise taxes. But guess who's opposed to raising taxes? Guess who's opposed to even the most modest rollback of the Trump tax cuts? That's right, Joe Manchin. This is the way that the tax game is played, administration by administration, is that Republicans make the tax cuts, and then Democrats sort of partly reverse it, or don't reverse it at all. And then the Republicans make more tax cuts. And then again, the Democrats only partly reverse them, or not at all. And the end game is that over time, the tax rate goes lower and lower and lower. Revenues are lower and lower and lower. There's less money to spend on the things that the country needs. And the US has one of the lowest levels of taxation in the Western, effective taxation in the Western world. It is something along the line. I think the data from the OECD, the tax wedge in the US, I think it's about 20% of GDP. Definitely no more than 25% of GDP, compared to most European countries being like 35% or more, some close to 50. That's a lot of money that is not being raised. That could be used for all this infrastructure spending, all this social spending, all this climate spending, all the things that you need. But because the US just cannot tolerate any financial, any measure that could impact the colossal wealth of its elites, because the US is a plutocracy, they don't do this.
The president put out a statement Friday saying that you still supported $1.7 trillion. He said you needed more time to finalize negotiations. And reporters asked you about that, and you said the president put out that statement. It's his statement, not mine. So now what you're saying today makes a lot more sense of why you said that. You're a no.
Well, Brett, here's the thing. I've tried. I mean, I really did. And the president was trying as hard as he could. He has a lot of irons in the fire right now. I said more on his plate than he needs for this to continue when I'm having the difficulties I'm having. And basically, the challenge.
What difficulties are you having? I hate what he's playing here. It's like, oh, I'm working so hard to pass this bill, but really what I'm working so hard is to derail it. And I think he just got tired of it. I just think he got tired of playing this game over and over and saying, oh my God, they're delaying this until the new year. Oh my God, I just need to just end this now. I really think that's his strategy. He just got tired of playing his own bullshit game. Just decided, yeah, let's get it over with. Let's move to a different topic. Let's move to a different issue that I can subsequently derail. And he's going to talk about this later in the interview. That's why I want to show the whole thing, not just a snippet or two, which I suspect all the other channels are just going to show the snippets.
We have from different parts of our party, basically pushing in different ways. So everyone still has the aspirational things they want to do. They said, well, can we still make this fit? We'll just cut it down to 2 years versus 10 years. We'll cut this one down to 4 years versus 10 years, or 1 year versus 10 years. That's not being genuine
Right.
as far as I'm concerned with my constituents in West Virginia.
The Congressional
And I've
Budget
said this,
Office.
if I can't explain it, yeah, they put the congressional, it's the bipartisan, Brett, Congressional Budget Office. They're upwards of 4.5 trillion. 4.5 trillion, if everything that's still in the bill today, even though they said they've cut it down, still in the bill, would be paid for in full, you're in that 4.5 trillion. We've got, again, I'm telling you, we've got COVID at us. We haven't tackled that one and finished that. We've got inflation, which we don't know when it's going to end, and that's going to take a tremendous toll. And that's what we're concerned about. That's what our efforts should be right now.
All right, last thing on this before we move on. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted out, people want to butt Manchin everyone to death, but learned helplessness is not a disposition that inspires confidence or support. The president has tools at his disposal. Leadership has tools at their disposal. If it's really just 1 or 2 votes, Senate should force a vote on Build Back Better. Understanding, Senator, that it's not just 1 or 2 votes, it's 51 potentially, with all the Republicans united against the bill. But what do you think she's talking about? And without your vote, this bill dies, right?
Hey, Brett, the bottom line, I didn't hear the first at the start when you said something. I must have cut out. I didn't get the first.
She said people want to butt Manchin everyone to death. Butt Manchin says this, but learned helplessness is not a disposition that inspires confidence or support.
Well, okay, I got you. Here's the thing. When it's time, just vote. I've been saying that. Just vote. If that's what people need to show where they are, then vote. I've been trying to say it, and I don't know how many different ways I can say it. The frustration from my colleagues, friends of mine on both sides of the aisle, but my Democrat colleagues who are frustrated. This has been strung out for so long, 5.5 months. They're trying to make this adjustment, this adjustment. They're just trying to make the adjustment for the time to fit the money, or the money to fit the time. Not changing our approach, not targeting things we should be doing. Making sure that people, basically that truly need it, are getting it. Making sure that we can do things in a much better fashion.
If he's so concerned about inflation, why hasn't he proposed any legislation to fight it? Genuinely curious, because this is what he does. He's like, he raises all these other concerns about other things that he doesn't actually work on. So, just excuses.
We have things that we can do in a bipartisan way, the way the Senate's supposed to work, if we'll just let it happen. Just go through the committees. Let's work it.
All right. A couple things first. There's a lot of criticism that says that you're doing this about environment and climate change. Your biggest critics say West Virginia's heavy reliance on coal industry and that you personally profit from investments in a family coal brokerage that you founded.
Sure.
What's your response to that?
No, I've heard all of those things, and I understand where they're coming from, and basically they're trying to get an agenda they wish to have.
I understand that they think that I'm corrupt as fuck because I personally profit from dirty energy. Yeah, I feel their concern. I'm sorry that you're sorry.
The main thing that we need is dependability, reliability. If not, you'll have what happened in Texas and happens in California. And no one's talking about defense of our country either. We just had a committee hearing on do we have the energy that we need to defend our country in time if we would have a conflict or a war. All these things. And the reliability and affordability.
Why is he assuming that renewable energy, if the U.S. was self-sufficient in renewable energy, wouldn't that be a pretty strong thing? It wouldn't be like that dependent on global prices as oil would or coal would, and wouldn't harm the environment. Why is he not making any of these considerations at all?
I have put, as chairman of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the last 2 years, working in a bipartisan bill, billions of dollars in clean energy technology. We're doing everything humanly possible. We've done more than it's ever been done in the past, and we're continuing to do that. But you can't let technology be behind basically the needs. If technology is not there, we've got to make sure that we're able still to rely on the United States of America. We have been energy basically independent for the first time in many, many years, 67 years or more. And we should not have to depend on other parts of the world to give us the energy or be able to hold us hostage for the energy or the foreign supply chains that we need for the products we use every day.
All right, Senator,
that's
Build
all
Back
I'm trying
Better
to do.
is essentially dead as written without your vote. But there's another push for voting rights and changing the filibuster in some way to get voting rights reform through. Are you open to changing either the rules or the structure of the filibuster to do that?
Well, first of all, voting. Just voting is the bedrock of democracy. We should all be concerned about that, Brett. It shouldn't be Democrat or Republican. As an American, and the democracy and the freedoms we enjoy, it becomes because we have an open process of electing our officials and believing and making sure it's secured. So we should be working on that together. And next of all, if you can make the Senate work better, the rules is something we've changed over the years. 232 years there's been rule changes. But there's never been a change with the filibuster, the rights of the minority. And I made no commitments or promises on that. I am working on trying to make the Senate work better, bringing bills to the floor, amending them, having debates, understanding, being transparent to the public.
So the 60-vote threshold stays. You're in the seat of former Senator.
So I said that I think Brett Bayer did a pretty good job in this interview. I know that there's a lot of questions that I would have probably asked, but he is surprisingly pushing him on. Look, Joe Manchin is basically a Republican, and Fox News, their interest is in coddling people who have the same, at least economic ideology as your average Republican. But he's asked him a very straightforward question. Do you agree in eliminating the filibuster so that voting rights legislation can pass? And he hasn't answered he didn't answer the question, and now he's asked them again.
Robert Byrd from West Virginia. The 60 vote threshold stays under what you're proposing, maybe some exemptions or reforms. Is that what I'm hearing?
What you're hearing is basically, can we work on the rules that make this Senate work rather than the deadlock that we have right now? Everyone.
No, you can't. You can't. Because fundamentally, there is no conceivable way that you will pass anything insofar as the filibuster exists. You just can't. The only things that you can pass are things that go under reconciliation rules. And voting rights, unfortunately, won't qualify for reconciliation because it doesn't really have any fiscal impact. That's kind of the rule of what can be covered by a reconciliation bill.
Thinks that end all, do all is basically in the filibuster. It's basically in how we operate and proceed every day of the Senate, which we're not doing. That's what needs to be changed.
Last thing, vaccine mandate. You had Friday a ruling from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals allowing President Biden's vaccine requirements for large private employers to move forward. You've been clear. You've been against mandates on businesses. What's your reaction to that, and what do you think is going to happen?
Remember, he said earlier that he was super concerned about the new COVID variants. But great surprise, he's against mandates.
Well, first of all, my reaction is President Biden has been doing everything humanly possible to get vaccines and making sure people understand how serious this is. I've had all of my vaccine shots and my booster too. I hope my whole family has. I recommend and basically plead with every West Virginian and every American to do so. But with that, I've said, first, public dollars. We're working for your tax dollars. Then the government employees, the military, all the services that we depend on by what we're supporting through our public dollars should be that mandate which the president put out as an order. I agree 1,000% with him. I did not agree on the private sector of 100 plus employees of a business or more. I thought businesses really should make those decisions. They have done and they want to do and keep their employees healthy. They should be able to make the decisions. It shouldn't be the government has to make every decision in the private arena. That's all. But now the courts have spoken. That is the law. I pray to good Lord that everyone abides by this law and get vaccinated. Please get vaccinated.
It's not the job of government to regulate anything that business do. No, this is Republican talking points. Republican talking points.
Senator Manchin, as always, good to talk to you, and Merry Christmas.
There we go. This was just really, really a good highlight of what Joe Manchin believes in. His style of rhetoric, this sort of fake concern by everything that he can use as an excuse to not pass a bill that would benefit millions of his constituents, and that somehow he is unable to explain to his constituents all the benefits that the Build Back Better bill would have on them, on their lives and livelihoods, while inventing this fake concern about inflation. Which, as I said, I have argued against. I made a video critiquing Larry Summers months ago, but I am now using him as a source, because if an inflation hawk like Larry Summers still doesn't think that the Build Back Better bill will be a significant contributor to inflation, then I'm sorry. Who are you using as a source for this? Who? The Cato Institute? The Heritage Institute? Yeah. But other than that, yeah, this, like I said, he didn't answer. I do think that the US media has a problem of not pushing them on and on and on again on certain issues. I wish they were also a bit more knowledgeable about economics so that they can grill them on more specific things. Other than that, I did enjoy that he did kind of ask him some slightly uncomfortable questions, which again, I even think that perhaps if he was on CNN or MSNBC, they wouldn't have asked him. But yeah, there you go. I made a video yesterday of Kamala Harris having an interview with Charlemagne the God, and he asked her who was the real president, Joe Biden or Joe Manchin. And I genuinely wonder if Joe Manchin saw that interview and decided, I'm really going to show the country who's boss. Because right now, what you just saw here was Joe Manchin showing that he is the boss, that he is the most powerful politician in the US right now, and that Joe Biden is, I wouldn't say powerless, but he chooses to be powerless against them because deep inside, I don't think Joe Biden really cared much for Build Back Better at all. So convenient to have someone who will always derail your plans that might make the country better. But yeah, there you go. This is the party that's going to appear in 2022, asking you to vote for them because the Republicans are so much worse. And then in 2024 is going to tell you that Trump is so much worse, and that's why you have to keep voting for them. And I mentioned in the previous video that this is a death loop of how liberal centrism is adapting itself in the age of fascism, and that it still basically doesn't want to do anything to improve the conditions of society. And now, because of that, has led to a rise of fascists. And now, thankfully, because we have fascists running for office, they have the excuse of just running on a platform of, hey, don't let them come to office. And it won't work. It just won't work. So if you like this video, please like, please share. Most importantly, please subscribe. I will see you next time.